Good morning. I'm starting a project that was Neil Craven's idea, and he suggested we do a video on barns, because what's happening around here, especially since there's not much livestock in Kent, especially in Kent County, a lot more in Lambton, but in Kent County there's no livestock, so nobody's keeping these barns up anymore. And so we're gonna go around for the next maybe 2 or 3 weeks and put together a video on barns. What we're gonna do with this barn video, and I hope it doesn't get too long, but we're gonna go to some barns that people have fixed up or have found another use for. And I've been chewing this idea around all night last night. I had another one of my, and Ed'll know about this, sleepless nights where I toss and turn and turn and toss it. I get an idea in this pumpkin head of mine, and I cannot sleep. And last night was one of those nights. I had 2 ideas on my head last night. One was a barn tour, and the other one was a brine applicator. So I've got the brine applicator looked after. Now we're gonna head for this barn tour. I just thought this barn, by filming it, you can see the bones that are in these barns, and see how all the work that went into building these things. And this is a perfect example. This barn was in good shape 10 years ago, and a few boards come off the end, and one thing and another. And anyway, these are hand-hewed beams. So what they would do when they built this thing, they would lay it all out on the ground, and then they would come along and get a whole bunch of people together someday, and they'd stick this barn up, and one day there'd be kind of a head carpenter would have it all figured out. That'd be a job for somebody like Uncle Huey. He would think about all this. They would take days to cut this lumber and get it squared up and pinned in there, mortised in there. And they've got pegs in here to hold them in. You can see there's a peg sticking out there, and there's another peg here. So they'd have to cut those pegs and drill them holes. Those holes would all be drilled by hand. There wouldn't be any no battery powered DeWalt's back then. This barn's probably, I would guess, 100 years old maybe. Anyway, I just thought I'd come and film this barn. This one's kind of beyond fixing, but there was a lot of work went into building these things. And that mow, probably there isn't a nail in it. Those boards are, I guess they're planks. They would just be laid up there, and they would set them beams on there. They're just sitting on there, and like, where are they gonna go? There's nothing moving. And they would fill that full of hay or straw or whatever. Anyway, I thought I would start this barn project with this barn, and then most of the barns we're going to go look at are barns that have either been repurposed or in the case of Neil's, his is still full of cattle, and we'll see that. We're going to see that one for sure. Okay, Neil, I'm back out here again. Neil's getting to be pretty familiar on the channel, and Neil come up with the idea that we should do a little video on barns, because barns in Kent and Lambton County have been disappearing at a tremendous rate, haven't they, Neil?
Yeah.
And so what we're doing is going around looking at barns that have been repurposed or or being used for livestock as this one is, and just trying to do a backstory on some of these barns, because you drive by and say, well, there's a nice barn over there, but you know, you don't know the story of it. And so we're going around doing a little story on some of these barns, and Neil's got a very interesting barn here. It's a big barn, and this is one of the few barns around that's actually used for livestock. So tell us about it, Neil.
Well, it's about 40 by 80, Dennis, and it was, we'll show you inside. The original barn burnt down. I believe it burnt down somewhere in the 1940s. It was in the concrete here, it's stamped 1946. So, and it burnt down the first time with spontaneous combustion. Because the old guy, Donald McCarroll, that was here, that we bought the farm from, he was just petrified when we're baling hay of spontaneous combustion, because that burnt down when he was here. He was here. So anyhow, Donald always, we would bale it, we'd pull a stone boat, and we stoop the hay out in the field in piles for like a week, and it usually get rain on it. Then we'd go and pick it up and put it in his mouth, because he was just paranoid of having spontaneous combustion for a second. So this barn was built around 1946. It's fairly new when you look at these style of barns, because they had poured concrete in this, whereas a lot of barns were either brick or the barn structure went right down to a footing, whereas this is up on about a 10-foot wall made of poured concrete. It looks to me that they'd pour a layer every day by the marks you can see, and then they start the structure, the wood structure from there on up. And this was built, it's young enough that they used a buzzsaw or something to cut it, because all the beams are cut with a saw, whereas older structures were hand hewed with a big axe. They shaped all
with a shin hoe.
Yeah, they shaped them all with axes. So anyhow, we can go inside and see this one. We're still using it. We've got some cows in it. The bulls are in it, and then in the back is our calving pens where if we have to assist some cows. But the big thing I think that takes a lot of these barns down is you don't fill them with hay and straw anymore, and she's just a big tin can up there. There's nothing kind of holding it up, and they get rocking and rolling, and the roof's starting to go. This roof is starting to go a little bit, but we're trying to keep it so much as we can. It needs a new paint job. But
what happens is 2 boards will come off the west end, and that's the end. Yeah. As soon as 2 boards are off, it starts blowing the boards off the east end, and then she's whistling through, and then down she comes.
There are some loose boards that, you know, nowadays we'd run around with a screw gun, I suppose.
Yeah.
And that's a project for another day. Yeah.
So these beams are interesting.
Yeah, so there's you can see here they're all been milled with a buzzsaw or something.
Somebody had a sawmill.
Yeah. So that beam there has got to be 12 by 11 or 12 by 12. And pretty much all the lumber came right out of the bush right here. And a lot of it's all ash. And they'd mill it likely the day after they cut it, and they'd put it in here because you can't get a nail in it 2 days later when she starts to cure.
It gets hard.
It gets hard. Real hard. This is the thrashing floor they call these, right? So they would have brought the stooks of straw or whatever, or loads of hay up in here, and then there's the cars over there, right?
Yeah.
They pull them up, and they'd have a team out the outside that would lift it, right, and then pull it to where you want to trip it and dump it.
So what is that, 50 feet high, 60 feet high?
No, I don't know.
Man,
40 feet anyhow.
It's high, yeah, it's all of 40 feet.
We've had hay up as high as that second beam up in there. That second cross member there. So every year we put about 2,000 square bales of hay on that side, and we'll put about 1,000 bales of straw over here. So the truss work up there is rough cut, likely 2x4s, right? Going up. And in the older barns that were hand hewed, those would be just 6 8-inch logs. Poles up in there.
Maybe one side flattened.
Yeah, just trimmed to lay the plank here.
And then I see that beam up there, they've got it notched. One beam sits over the other, and it'll probably be pegged.
Yeah, there's pegs in. You can see the peg end right here.
Yeah, it's pegged. They've marked where the pins go, and marked where this notch comes out here.
Yeah. And then another mark like the depth of it or something.
So that's only been 73 years.
Yeah. Pretty good lead in their pencils then.
Yeah, I guess they had lead in their pencil then. I don't know whether I got that much lead in my pencil or not. Well, she's quite a barn. This one is in really good shape though.
Yeah.
Would be a pity to knock this thing down.
Yeah.
But you know, there's lots of them in the country that get knocked down that are as good as this one too.
Yeah. But you know, around this area, like southwestern Ontario, maybe Ohio, Michigan, around the Great Lakes area is the only place you see these type of barns. Maybe up in Quebec you'd see them too, and in Maine, because they had the timber to build them. Once you get into Manitoba, there's no timber to build them, so they're smaller Quonset structures. And then you get into Alberta, where we were, there were some barns not as big as these, with some post and beams, because they're back into some lumber area and closer in the foothills in Alberta. But they're kind of unique to the Great Lakes district, I would say. Like if you go 100 miles, 200 miles either side of the Great Lakes, you likely don't see these type of structures. Maybe in the Carolinas or someplace down in there, but basically is where the raw materials were. It's the only place you see these.
Well, that's good, Neil. Thanks for taking the time to show us your barn. And I do want to tell everybody this was actually your idea to do a little story on the barn.
We're always trying to find a job for you to do, Dennis.
Yeah, I need another job.
The boys told me to do that.
Anyway, thanks, Neil. And we're out here at Johnson Farms in Sombra, Ontario. Where are we? About a mile from the big river, Ed? Yeah. About a mile from the big river. This is for the barn tour. And what Ed's got here is what I call a barn rescue. I could remember, when was there cattle in here, Ed?
66 was the last.
1966. Well, there you go. I said it'd be 50 years ago. And what Ed's done, well, go ahead and tell us, Ed, what all you've done here.
Well, the old barn, Dad never wanted to tear it down because it's kind of a bit of history, and if you got something, you don't tear it down. These days, it's not worth fixing it up, but we decided to add on a lean-to here so we get equipment in. So we had this done. We had a big storm come through 6 years ago, and it blew all this part that was here down, and so they changed the rules kind of that this section had to be freestanding, as you can see the way it's put together. So if need be, the barn could come down and this would stand as it is. They shot the rafters up there, but it's only to tie in and to put the roof on it. So it serves the purpose, but the barn in the old days is low, and it's just not serviceable, really.
That's why these barns are disappearing, because they're you can't get any machinery in them.
No, you can't put anything in anymore. Everything's so high, and you almost bump your head. And over here, I guess we can look at it later, Dennis, but you can see where the mow was. This opening here was where we used to buck the hay in, and there were slings. We took it up to the hay mow, and there was a pulley right on this corner here. You can see this eye. The pulley was here, and pulled the slings up. You drove the tractor out, go in, and there's a track up there. We'll go upstairs, and maybe Dennis can show you the way it was in the old days.
You'd work all day and have nothing done at the end of the day, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's right.
These are hand-hewn beams, aren't they?
Yeah, you can see where the wood, the pins have been driven in, the wooden pins. Here they are here. And it was all spiked. And this, there's two sections, if you can see the different colors in wood. This part here, what my dad said was around the late 1800s it was built. They moved this piece here with the lighter timbers in 1928.
Oh, they stuck it on the end.
They stuck her on the end. You can see where it's tied in over there, or kind of tied in. And they moved it about 600 feet to the west and tied it in here. So this all used to be hay mow. We took all this out here and raised the doors, and we had the cattle in. This used to be the calf pen, and the steers and the cows were here.
Years ago.
Years ago.
And now Johnny's in there.
Johnny's in there.
Johnny Deere.
Johnny Deere, yeah.
Well, this is quite a barn rescue. You even got a catwalk. Is this a catwalk?
Yeah. Well, we got tired of putting the ladders up, and so we built this here. We kind of had this open because we store stuff down here, and so this is kind of handy. We can get in here with the forks.
Oh, you can stick stuff right up here.
Stick stuff up here.
Well, this is a real good barn rescue, I think. Like, you've got her all open. She's good.
There's the track up there too. The car's still hanging off the track, eh? With the rope. So you can set that car. It could either go to the left or to the right when it came up here. And so if you wanted to put, because this was barn floor, this was all open. So there was a hay mow on this side and one on this side. And so that car then, there was 3 slings that went around your hay, and it came up, track went over here, you pulled the rope and tripped it.
So would that be loose hay or baled hay?
Loose hay.
Loose hay.
It was put in with a buck rake. My dad had one of the first buck rakes alone. So you put it in a windrow with a dump rake, you'd back the buck rake along, pick her up, put her up here.
Well, that's something. Well, she's in good shape though, isn't it?
Well, it is. It is in pretty good shape. You can see where this one, there's a lean-to off to the other side, but you can see how it's tied into the top plate.
Yeah.
Where this one over here is freestanding.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, thanks, Ed, for taking the time to show us around.
Thank you, Dee.
That's really good. So today I'm out at Fred and Fred Martin's on the edge of town in Dresden, and which wasn't a long haul for me. And today I've got editor Cameron with me, mostly because he's helping today. There's no school. And Fran, how are you, Fran?
Good, good.
And what they've got is a pretty unique barn. Actually, the whole place is unique. The house, they call it Martin Station.
Right.
And they've got it on the silo. And what they've done, and how many years have you been here, Fran?
25.
25 years?
Yep. The barn is leaked. The roof has leaked for 25 years.
And now it's fixed.
And now it's fixed.
Finally,
yes.
25 years later.
Yep.
So I remember this used to have wood siding on it and a leaky roof. And they've put steel siding on it, got it trimmed up pretty nice. And last week you put a new roof on it.
Yep, yep.
So it should be good for another 50 years.
It should be good. For as long as I'm here, it'll be good, for sure.
And the other thing that really caught my eye when I drove in was the windmill. They've got a windmill, so like if anything ever happens, like a pandemic or something, and you need water, well, they've got a windmill. So I just wanted to drop in today and kind of show this barn and show what you can do. They've got it, all their tractors in there, and they store a boat in there, and various things I imagine belongs to the family.
Yes.
Everybody brings their stuff.
That's right. That's right. All the stuff that Fred builds, we put up there too. Yeah.
We'll take it and store it in the barn.
Yeah. You never know. You might need it someday.
Yep.
That's what they say.
And it's nice to see somebody looking after these barns, because once they're gone, they're gone. And this one looks like it's going to stand for a lot more years now. It's got a new roof, so it should be good for 50 more years. Anyway, that should do her.
Okay.
Well, this video is getting to be a little bit long. Cameron said we better end it here. So I want to just take a minute and thank you for viewing. If you like this video, we've got lots of barns. We've filmed lots of barns. We can do a 2-part. And we'll only put a second part up if we get a bunch of likes. So if you like this barn video and want to see a few more, give us a like and a subscribe if you hadn't subscribed. If we get enough likes, then we'll put up another part to this video. So with that, I want to thank you for viewing, and we'll catch you later.